Right friends, welcome back to Learning Space. This is newspaper editorials discussion. Today we will have 5 issues of the Hindu. There were 2 important issues of Saturday. I am going to deliberate in the coming days. Today we are going to deliberate on 5 issues, and out of 5 the most important is with regard to Western Ghats, and the next issue is with regard to Sri Lanka. Then about economy one issue, then INS Viraat decommissioning. So, these aspects we are going to deliberate. The first issue is saving the Ghats. So, Western Ghats, in fact this is the saga of 7-8 years. First Madhav Gadgil committee, then Kasturi Rangan committee, then 2 draft notifications of 2014 and 2015. And now government came up with another draft notification, right. So, before going ahead, the news report is government notified around 57,000 square kilometers of area in Western Ghats region as ecologically sensitive area. And please do not forget, Western Ghats continues for 6 states right from Tamil Nadu, followed by after Tamil Nadu it is Kerala, then Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, Gujarat. So, these are 6 states. And another important aspect is, as per this notification, mining activities, large constructions, thermal power plants and highly polluting industries, or you can say industries in red zone would not be allowed. And if you look at the Western Ghats, as I have already told you, they are continuous almost from Tamil Nadu right up to Gujarat. And Eastern Ghats, I have seen this site, Eastern Ghats are not that continuous. And other important aspect is the average height of Western Ghats is more than the average height of Eastern Ghats. And third difference between Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats is Western Ghats has got less coastline and Eastern Ghats has got more width of coastline. And fourth important difference is Western Ghats are ecologically sensitive, known for biodiversity, but Eastern Ghats are not that. So, this is the basic difference between Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. And in Western Ghats, Anaimudi in Kerala is the highest location, right. So, Western Ghats I just now explained. It runs through 6 states, as I have already told you, and it is one of the world's 10 biodiversity hotspots. I will explain you what is the meaning of hotspot. I would like to throw some light on what is meant by biodiversity, what is biodiversity hotspot. So, these are the aspects we are going to discuss, and what is the difference between the recommendations of Madhav Gadgil and Kasturi Rangan committee, and why Western Ghats are so important. These aspects we are going to deliberate, and here it is one of the world's 10 biodiversity hotspots. We are going to deliberate on that. Next point is one of India's World Heritage Sites. Western Ghats is one of the India's World Heritage Sites, and instantly please do not forget, 3 were added to the list of this World Heritage Sites recently, probably a year ago. 3 sites were added to the list of Indian World Heritage Sites, and at present India has got around 35 World Heritage Sites, and recently added 3. Nalanda is one, second one is Capital Complex Chandigarh, and the third one is Sikkim Kanchenjunga National Park. So, these 3 are newly added to the World Heritage Sites. So, here this Western Ghats is also one of the World Heritage Sites. Then the highest peak, as I have already told you, Anaimudi in Kerala, it is the highest peak at a altitude of around 2,700 meters in Western Ghats. And if you look at Western Ghats, they are basically almost 1600 kilometers in length. The length is around 1600 kilometers, and average width you can say, some places it is less, some places it is more, that is different story, but average width is around 100 kilometers. So, the total area of Western Ghats is around 1,60,000 square kilometers. total area of Western Ghats is 1,60,000 square kilometers, and in fact the Gadgil committee says entire 1,60,000 square kilometers must be protected by bifurcating them into zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and subsequently Kasturi Rangan committee reduced the area, and now the notification further reduced the area. Probably there is a lot of pressure from Kerala, right. So, if you continue the discussion, next one is what is meant by biodiversity. Why this Western Ghats is much talked about? Because of its biodiversity, and ecologically it is highly sensitive. What is the meaning of biodiversity? It is variety and variability of life on earth. This is the variability within species and between the species and between the ecosystems. So, this is biodiversity, and Western Ghats is known for this ecological biodiversity. The basic crux of the matter is that must be protected at any cost, right. And this is a picture representing biodiversity, and at the same time ecosystem. This is frequently talked about. Ecosystem is the coexistence without spoiling the environment. If the living creatures are able to live, that forms ecosystem. So, you can say the relationship or the interaction, you can say, to be specific, interaction between living things and non-living things is the meaning of ecosystem. And biodiversity is variety and variability on the earth is this biodiversity. It may be within species, between species, or between ecosystems, right. So, this is the clear difference between biodiversity and ecosystem. Now, I talked about hotspot. What is a biodiversity hotspot? Biodiversity hotspot means it is a biogeographic region, and the region with significant levels of biodiversity. We talked about biodiversity just now because it is the variation of various species, and significant diversification of biodiversity is there in the Western Ghats. That is why it is one of the world's 10 hotspots if you look at biodiversity. So, this is under threat from human beings. That is why this Madhav Gadgil committee, Kasturi Rangan committee, Ministry of Environment, everyone is talking about Western Ghats because of the reason it is under threat from human beings. And hotspot, when do we call hotspot? We call hotspot when it contains at least 0.5% or 1500 species of vascular plants as endemics. Endemically, here at least 0.5% must be the vascular plants. Vascular plants means, please look into this picture. Vascular plant is basically the plant which will have conducting tissues. So, as to carry minerals, water from the root to the far end of the plant, when it has conducting tissues, that is a vascular plant. So, as per hotspot definition, 0.5% or 1500 species of vascular plants as endemics, and also it has lost at least 70% of primary vegetation. So, it has lost 70% of primary vegetation. Western Ghats was already spoiled. That is why it was declared as one of the world's 10 hot spots, right. So, this is about hotspot. So, if you look at further about Western Ghats, 1,60,000 square kilometers in area, around 1600 kilometers in length, rough width is around 100 kilometers, which makes 1,60,000 square kilometers. So, this is about biodiversity, ecosystem, hotspot, Western Ghats. Then let us come back to why this is being talked about, and we have to go back around 7-8 years. First was Madhav Gadgil committee. It has gone towards protecting the ecology of Western Ghats. People say it is biased towards ecology, and people say Kasturi Rangan committee is biased towards development. And now, in a trade-off between ecology and development, now the government notification is somewhat diluted probably taking into effect the concerns of Keralites. Right, Madhav Gadgil Committee, it is known as Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel or WGEEP, and as per Madhav Gadgil Committee, it declared entire hill ranges should be ecologically sensitive area. All 1,60,000 square kilometers must be ecologically sensitive area, and having said that, the report stated that the entire 1,60,000 square kilometers must be bifurcated into ESZ1, ESZ2, ESZ3. ESZ means ecologically sensitive zone. It stated let entire 1,60,000 square kilometers is ecologically sensitive. Sorry. And at the same time, let us have guidelines differently for ESZ1, ESZ2 and ESZ3. ESZ1 must be of high priority, and mining thermal power plants should be restricted in ESZ1 and some restrictions on ESZ2, ESZ3. So, recommended bottom up approach. That means the recommendations with regard to the environmental concerns must come from Gram Sabhas, and at the same time it also recommended this WGEA, Western Ghats Ecological Authority under this Environmental Protection Act 1986 must be established, and the state's objections are there. When this WGEA is established as per Environmental Act 1986, then the state's power will be lost altogether. So, states are vehemently opposing this Madhav Gadgil report. And under these circumstances, central government appointed Kasturi Rangan committee report. It diluted whatever is given by Madhav Gadgil committee. In fact, it is biased towards development, probably by looking at the ground realities in the Western Ghats. Probably Kasturi Rangan committee might have given its report with a little bias towards development. And here only about 60,000 square kilometers. This is 1,60,000. But Kasturi Rangan committee taken around 37% as ecologically sensitive area, and it recommended complete ban on mining, quarrying, and it distinguished between cultural and natural landscape, and at the same time mining areas in ESA to be phased out in 5 years, and red industries should be banned. Red industries means polluting industries, they must be banned, and it is significant reduction from that of Gadgil committee. Right, we discussed about these two aspects, and this is the history for the past 7-8 years. And after that, we have to look at Kerala issue. Even Kerala issue, Kasturi Rangan committee recommended around 13,000 kilometers, but state government vehemently opposed that, and Kerala government came up with a fresh proposal of around 10,000 square kilometers, and the present notification is only for this 10,000 square kilometers, but it has not gone up to the level of Kasturi Rangan committee. So, it is further dilution, especially Kerala is the main focus here. Then what about this notification? Now, as I have already told you, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change came up with the 2 draft notifications in 2014 and 15, and they could not see the light of the day, and now it came up with another notification a few days ago. So, it allows 60 days, in fact public comments, and then all kinds of mining activities, large constructions, thermal power plants, highly polluting industries will not be allowed in this area. Then all red category industries, bifurcation is there, red means highly polluting industries, they will be banned altogether. Similarly, there will be ban on construction of built up area above certain level, this is very important. Up to certain level they are allowed, beyond certain level they are disallowed. Then orange category of industries will be strictly regulated. First is red category, then orange category, red no, orange with some restrictions. Then all the existing mining activities are to be phased out within 5 years in ecologically sensitive area of this around 60,000 square kilometers. Right, now finally dilution on certain aspects. first dilution is allowing construction up to certain area, allowing construction up to certain built up area will not serve the purpose of saving the Western Ghats ecological system. Second one is existing thermal power plants will also be continued, only their expansion will not be allowed. Existing thermal power plants are causing a lot of pollution, and what is the point in continuing them? And though the extension is not allowed, but continuing them probably will further damage the ecology of Western Ghats. Then hydropower projects in ESA will be allowed with condition of maintaining 30% water flow. Is it possible to ensure? Only in the circular the government may commit that they will allow 30% of water flow during lean season, but technically it is not enforceable. Once this hydropower project is constructed, then no one can ensure this type of condition, because several times you may not be left with water. Right. So, the trade off is normally difficult between development and environment in any country, especially in a country like developing country India. It is always difficult to have trade off between environmental concerns and development. Right. So, certain dilution is there, and we have to wait and see about public comments for next 60 days, and we will track what will happen in future. So, this is the beginning of this third draft notification, and we will come up with further capsules as and when the things move. Right. We will stop with regard to this article here. Then the second one is elusive reconciliation. What is the issue? This is with regard to Sri Lankan civil war. In fact, Sri Lankan civil war was an armed conflict. All of you are familiar with LTTE as well as Prabhakaran. It was armed conflict, and this is against LTTE and government forces on one side, LTTE on the other side. So, this is the armed conflict, or you can say it was the armed conflict for around 26 years, right from 1983 right up to 2009. Finally, the civil war came to an end in May 2009, and there were several comments or accusations against the Sri Lankan army that they committed serious war crimes. That is one part, and around 80,000 to 1 lakh people were killed during its course, and there were reports of war crimes, as I have already told you. Sri Lanka, in fact, this part is badly affected because of this civil war. And now, if you look at further developments, the present case is with regard to the 2015 Sri Lanka sponsored resolution of UN Human Rights Council. Yet Human Rights Council, United Nations Human Rights Council, in fact, Sri Lanka was also one co-sponsorer, and Sri Lanka committed that in future no excessive use of force, no torture, no arbitrary arrests against Sri Lankan Tamils or Muslims or other minorities, but there are cases of excessive use of force, torture and arbitrary arrests are continuing in Sri Lanka, and this is against the promise made by the Sri Lankan government with regard to reconciliation efforts with the Tamil ethnic minority. So, this editorial is about this issue. Please look at the issue of this ethnic minority, otherwise things may go bad once again. Now, the issues involved is, in fact, establishing a hybrid judicial mechanism with the domestic and foreign judges to try the cases. In fact, when judges are from Sri Lanka, some bias can be attributed. So, the hybrid mechanism will involve Sri Lankan judges and foreign judges. This is establishing a hybrid judicial mechanism. This was not taken off. The second one is returning the military occupied lands to Tamil civilians in north and eastern part of the country. and in fact some lands were occupied by the military during the civil war, and that is to be handed over to the Tamils. So, that is another problem. So, these issues are to be solved, otherwise what will happen, the relationship between government and ethnic Tamils may again go from good to bad, bad to worse. So, that is about this article. Then the next one is no time for complacency. This article says the macroeconomics of our country is quite good at this juncture. GDP not only the recent Q3 figures, but also the forecast by IMF and OECD, and about the structural macroeconomics of our country, they are also satisfactory as per OECD, as per IMF, but this article says that we should have caution at this juncture. So, it is talking about no time for complacency. Certain aspects it is suggesting, and let us look at the important points. Recent GDP figures show the robust economic environment. Recent figures of around 7% show that the economy is quite robust, that means a strong, healthy, robust meaning is strong, healthy, and there may be some correction after the real figures of informal sector, because informal sector figures come late, and sometimes informal sector is also not tracked properly. That may be the reason for high GDP figures which were reported for Q3 recently, and now after correction and Q4 figures also may reduce, that is different story, but overall the pointers, in fact the reports given by not only IMF but also OECD says that India's growth forecast is quite robust. That is what the article wants to convey, and they conclude that the Indian economy is robust because consumption demand and accelerated structural reforms. Government, some structural reforms already took place. You may have a doubt what are meant by structural reforms in this article. Government has gone for some reforms last year, insolvency and bankruptcy code, that is one aspect. Then the goods and services tax, then this inflation targeting in monetary policy, inflation targeting is 4% plus or minus 2%. Then monetary policy committee was established with 3 external members, 3 internal members. So, these are all examples of structural reforms. So, you come across in economy articles quite frequently about structural reforms. When someone says structural reforms, they are the reforms normally undertaken by the government with some radical change in mind, and to change the ground reality. The ground reality may be bad, and to change it, it requires structural reforms. GST is one example of structural reform. Right. So, because of structural reforms, the economy is robust, and our economy, in fact, current account deficit is around 0.3, 0.4%. It is quite safe, inflation under control, it is within the government's target of 4% plus or minus 2%. So, inflation is absolutely under control. Then enhanced public and private consumption. Government stepped up public investment and public consumption. Public means government. So, in GDP, one important factor is government consumption and government investment. So, here government stepped up its consumption and investment. Then similarly, private consumption is consumption by people like you and me. If I purchase a mobile phone, then demand will be created for those mobile phones. So, that is private consumption. Our population is huge, demographic dividend is also there. In fact, young population is quite high in our country, that is why this private consumption will always be there. So, these are the positive aspects, but the most biggest and unfortunate aspect is private investment. Private investment is not taking off. For the past 1 or 2 years, this is the biggest problem for economy. And second problem is of course exports. Exports are not picking up but on export front you may not do much, but this is the biggest worry for Indian economy. If someone says which is the most volatile component of Indian economy, that is in fact private investment, right. So, if you look at the concerns as per this article, the first concern is high interest payments due to high public debt. High interest payments due to high public debt. The public debt is increasing this year. That means for 2017-18 it is pegged at 3.2% of GDP. N.K. Singh, this article was written by N.K. Singh, please do not forget, N.K. Singh headed the FRBM committee which was formed recently. So, as per the committee report, this by 2023 total public debt must be tagged with GDP that should not exceed 60% for states and union put together. At present, the public debt, total public debt for states and union put together is around 69%. Because of high public debt, interest payments are going more, and another unfortunate aspect is we are borrowing money to bridge the fiscal deficit, and part of that money is being spent for revenue expenditure. That means normally we borrow money with the intention of creating capital assets, but substantial part of borrowings is going for revenue expenditure. So, the point here to note is government should restrict this public debt to 60% from around 69% at present by 2023. So, that is the main recommendation of N.K. Singh committee, and his concern is interest payments must be reduced. Second point is twin balance sheet problem. What is this? This is in fact point of discussion last year economic survey. What is the meaning of twin balance sheet problem? Here twin balance sheet problem is companies are under trouble, several infrastructure companies, they are under trouble, they have taken loans from banks, and as they are not paying back, banks are also under trouble. So, balance sheets of both banks and companies, both are in problems. So, under these circumstances, how to bring this banks out of the distress, at the same time how to solve this problem of this non-payment of debt by various companies. So, this is a twin balance sheet problem, and here he said he referred to this public sector asset rehabilitation agency which was suggested in this year's economic survey along with the universal basic income, and this public sector asset rehabilitation agency, it can solve the problem, but there must be haircut. You may have a doubt what is meant by haircut. Haircut means it is not the cut what we do, that is the cut basically when some problem is there in economy, both the parties must be ready to reduce. If 100 crores is to be paid by one company to State Bank of India, and both the firms should agree for 50 crores or 60 crores, that is a haircut which is normally used in economy. So, are the banks ready for haircut? That is the biggest question, right. So, this para will be successful only when there is willingness on the part of the banks to go for haircut, but banks are not in a position to take haircut because of the reason they are fearing vigilance and CBI, right. So, the next one is another concern is he is talking about, it is basically a suggestion instead of para. Para is one concept, that is okay, but he is suggesting Banking and Finance Council. Banking and Finance Council, in fact, as per this article, Monetary Policy Committee, Banks Board Bureau, these two are in the right direction, but now Banking and Finance Council, he mooted one idea basically to discuss with all the stakeholders. Stakeholders means both the banks as well as these companies which are defaulted. So, to discuss with both banks and this defaulted companies, he is suggesting Banking and Finance Council, right, and GST is a good move, but one more suggestion he is giving, local governments must be empowered. Basically, local governments must be empowered and state governments must be incentivized based on the performance of local bodies like municipalities and corporations. So, incentives must be given to the state governments based on the performance of local bodies. So, that is what is mentioned in this article, right. Thought provoking concepts are there in this article. Let us look at the end of a voyage. I would like to tell 2 minutes. This is with regard to the aircraft carrier, and aircraft carriers assumed significance because China is almost surrounding our neighborhood. It is going to develop various ports, and subsequently after the development of ports, it will establish its naval bases. It is developing port, it is planning to develop port in fact in Myanmar and Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and at the same time Gwadar port already in progress. So, these are the ports in fact being developed in recent times in our neighborhood, and in future they may establish their naval bases. So, this Indian Ocean region may become the total prerogative of China in near due course of time. What I mean to say is, after the establishment of all these ports, then the positive environment created in those countries will definitely favor China for establishment of naval bases, right. So, this is China's aggressive attitude as far as these ports are concerned. So, this aircraft carriers, these are very much required, and this news item is with regard to bye-bye to INS Viraat. INS Viraat, originally built into British Royal Navy in 1959, and it served there for 27 years and purchased in 1986 by India, and it was commissioned into Indian Navy as INS Viraat in May 1987, and now it is being decommissioned. Now 2017 March 6 it is decommissioned. In fact, it was planned to be decommissioned in 2016, and now it is being decommissioned today. This is about INS Viraat, right. And if you look at after the decommissioning of INS Viraat, we will be left with only INS Vikramaditya. Please do not forget, aircraft carrier means aircrafts can take off from this. Please see, aircrafts can take off from this, that is why they are called aircraft carriers, and these are important requirements of Navy. And now if you look at INS Vikrant, it was decommissioned in 1997, and by the same name another aircraft carrier is being built in Kochi, that is different story, and this was decommissioned in 1997. And INS Viraat, it is being decommissioned today, and only INS Vikramaditya will remain in service. Please do not forget, if you look at aircraft carriers, and at the same time this is INS Vikramaditya, this is built in Russia, or you can say the then USSR, and the original name was Baku, and it entered into service in 2013, and it is named after Vikramaditya, a legendary emperor of Ujjain. So, if someone talks about aircraft carrier, now we are left with only INS Vikramaditya. INS Viraat will also become history from today. INS Vikrant became history in 1997. Then what about future? Future INS Vikrant with the same old name, that is being built for the Indian Navy by Cochin Shipyard Limited, expected to be in service by 2018, and few years from now you will have INS Vishal, and it is much bigger one, probably 65,000 ton class. This is INS Vikrant is around 40 to 45,000 ton class. So, this 65,000 ton class, not only that, INS Vishal will have nuclear propulsion also. So, at present INS Vikramaditya, next INS Vikrant will come, subsequently INS Vishal will come. INS Vishal will have more displacement. The meaning is it can have capacity of carrying more aircrafts for takeoff, right. Last one, indiscriminate discrimination. What is the meaning of it? The meaning is, now there are news reports that Indians, or you can say Asians, are facing discrimination in United States of America after the election of Donald Trump, but this article says this started in early 20th century. Early 20th century, there was a lot of discrimination against Indians. Please look into this. The first wave of Indian migrants to US came around 1900 or so. After 1900, during the first 5-10 years, the early migrants came to United States of America through Canada, and most of them from Punjab and former soldiers of British Empire. They first migrated to USA through Canada, basically work in lumber industry. This is basically related to timber products. So initially they found work in this industry, and on September 5, 1907, a mob of several hundred white people rounded up around 700 Indian workers and forced them to leave the town. Unfortunately, in 1907, 700 Indian workers were mobbed, and similar incidents happened subsequently, and previously in 1885 also similar fate happened to Chinese workers, and several immigrants from other parts of Asia had been facing such persecution during the first half of 20th century. So it is not new to United States of America. It happened during the first half of 20th century also, and legally also. In fact, US Supreme Court declared in 1922, legally also, we faced many problems during the first half of 20th century. In 1922, US Supreme Court declared that white persons eligible for American citizenship must be of Caucasian race. You may have a doubt what is meant by Caucasian race. Here across the world, there are prominently 3 races. One is the Caucasian, second one is Mongoloid, third one is Negroid. One is the Caucasian. Caucasian race is basically Europe, North Africa, then West Asia, Central Asia, South Asia, and we all belongs to Caucasian except some people of northeastern part of our country. Broadly speaking, we all belongs to Caucasian and Mongoloid. Mongoloids are basically East Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia. So that region, eastern part of Asia is Mongoloid, and some of the people of northeastern part of our country also belongs to Mongoloid. And when you look at the Negroid are basically sub-Saharan Africa. So sub-Saharan Africa people are basically Negroid. So these 3 are the basic human races. In fact, that is agreed by anthropologists, and some modifications here and there, some subsects are there. I am not going into those aspects. Basically speaking, you should not forget Caucasian, Mongoloid and Negroid. And here at the time, American citizenship, to have American citizenship, Caucasian race must be the condition. That is as per 1922 judgment. Basically, the decision was aimed at excluding the Japanese. Japanese are basically this Mongoloid, right? So to exclude this Japanese, that was brought by US Supreme Court. Indians claimed at that time that high caste Hindu were in fact Caucasian, but US Supreme Court ruled that intermarriages between Aryan invaders and dark skinned Dravidians over centuries destroyed the purity of Aryan blood in India. That was the discourse given by, in fact that was the judgment given by US Supreme Court. And subsequently Indians could not be considered for citizenship, and they were denied citizenship. And over the next decade, US government used the Supreme Court ruling to strip citizenship of many Indians who have been naturalized in that country. So in fact, several Indians lost their citizenship also subsequently, and the ruling was reversed only in 1946. So between 1922 to 1946, 24 years, there was legally also lot of discrimination was there, and that was reversed in 1946, basically allowing 100 Indians to immigrate to US every year. And in 1965, American immigration laws were reformed, and the second wave of Indian immigration in fact began in 1965. So most of these immigrants to USA from our country are from 1965, please don't forget. Right. So we discussed about Caucasian, Mongoloid, Negroid, and here 2 words are there in the passage. These 2 words please don't forget. One is persecution. Persecution means unfair or cruel treatment over a long period of time because of race, religion or political beliefs. And this persecution, another word is bigotry. Bigotry is strong unreasonable beliefs and disliking other people who have different beliefs. And one example of this bigotry is Islamic State. They have strong unreasonable beliefs and at the same time they dislike other people and they do not like the people whoever are not following their extreme beliefs. So, bigotry, persecution, right. So, Rohingyas is one example of persecution. Rohingyas in Myanmar are being persecuted. So, Rohingyas is one example of persecution and Islamic State is one example of bigotry. Right friends, with this let us conclude today's editorial discussion. Please do join at 12 noon for comprehension discussion. Have a nice day. Thank you.